So welcome to Crew Inland Empire's event with Chris King. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our Crew Inland Empire members for joining us today. I would like to thank our Crew Inland Empire chapter members from across the U.S. that are joining us today. And then a special shout out to Crew Orange County President Nicole Morse. She's joining us today as well. So thank you so much for that. We're really excited to have Chris here. Kylie's going to tell us about him and how he's going to change our life and let us embrace the suck and realize that even though it seems dark now, there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? That's what we've been talking about all morning. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Lorette Walls. I'm Crew Inland Empire Chapter President, and I'm very happy to be here this morning with all of you. I want to let you know that on our website, we have a great events coming up. And there's two of them that are now open for registration. There is a hold marker for everybody to kind of save the date, but now registration is open for it's July 19th, our summer fiesta, which if you haven't been to this fun tequila tasting dinner at Luna Modern Mexican in Corona, definitely join us. It will sell out, so sign up now if you'd like to. And that's going to be July 19th. And then September 9th, we have our evening at the 66ers Stadium in San Bernardino. So that event will be in a private suite hosted with cocktails and food, and it will be a lot of fun. So definitely check out our website for our current events coming up. So Kylie, would you like to introduce Chris and we can kick off our hour?
Absolutely. Thank you, Noreen. And thank you, Chris, for joining us. And so Chris began his career holding positions in marketing and public relations. And he went back to school and got his master's in spiritual psychology. Almost 11 years ago, he started his own company where he facilitates the journeys that lead to the discoveries that create sustainable transformations by offering peak performance executive coaching and motivational speaking with the foundations of flow. Chris leads with the goal of helping women and women-led organizations and teams to exceed their professional and personal goals with velocity. Clients walk away from Chris with improvements in performance and efficiency, communication, creativity, clarity for their next steps, and energized to take action to achieve their goals. Clients also feel relief after feeling stuck, burned out, or overwhelmed, and can now run their business instead of having their business running them. So without further ado, please help me join Chris King.
Thank you so much, and I'm so grateful to be here. Particularly with a group in the Inland Empire. Back in my radio days, I was actually on the air at Cola 99.9 and 96.7 KCal Rock. So it's very cool to virtually be back in the IE. So what I'm going to share with you today are the neuroscience behind the peak performance that you're looking for, and what peak performance is it is getting your physiology and your psychology to work for you instead of against you, because every one of you is a high-performing, high-power machine. And like think quantum supercomputer kind of power. The problem is most people have like Windows 95 rolled onto it, and so if you can hack your own software, then you can achieve the impossible. I've seen it happen many times. I've done it for myself. I will share with you quite candidly that my oldest sister died when she was 11 years old, and I was raised in a house of rage and abuse and grief and addiction, and I built my life on those pillars. And as you can imagine, I finally realized at one point that this just doesn't work, and so I had to hack and decode my entire inner world. And so this is why I do this for other people now, because I love watching people achieve what they swore was impossible. And so I'm going to give you some tools and some of the science as to how these tools work. I like to have a very bi-directional conversation. So unless there's a leaf blower or a screaming child or something, feel free to leave your mic open, shout out your questions. I think somebody, Kylie, I think is monitoring the chat as well. And I will also tell you that I seem to have a history. If there's a world record for typos, I'm going to win that sucker. So if you catch a typo in my presentation, I'm not saying there are, I'm just saying there might be. I will say, and you're the first one to tell me about it. I'll send you a $10 Starbucks gift card, because that, I just gave up trying to fix this for myself because clearly it's not my jam. So, all right. So that being said, I'm going to get into this presentation. And I'm assuming everybody can see this. Is that correct?
Coming through.
Okay, outstanding. Oops, and for some reason I cannot move this. I can't get it to. All right, let's try this. There we go. Awesome. All right. So what we work in is in a particular place, we deal with leverage, right? It's not about efficiency or productivity. It's about leverage, an input to output ratio. How do you get more with less? And more importantly, how do you make anything and everything work for you? And this is what they say in the military, is that embrace the suck. When things suck, well, we just have to deal with it. So there are ways to make this happen. Let's define what the suck is. Well, it's not that challenging. The weather can suck, traffic can suck, your boss can suck. Not anybody's boss here, of course, but somebody's boss somewhere, right? Paying bills can suck. The government can suck. That movie sucked. Oh my God. Car repairs suck. My friends can suck. Social media sucks. So what is it that all these things have in common that make them suck, right? Well, nothing really, because the suck is subjective. It's basically anything we don't like. And maybe we like it today, we don't like it tomorrow, right? But this all goes through the lens of personal responsibility, understanding that there is no objective that sucks, because the reality is that isn't anything. And even Shakespeare knew this when he wrote Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2. For nothing is either good nor bad. Thinking makes it so. If we like it, it's good. If we don't like it, it sucks. And it's really that simple, and it's very binary, you know? So how do we get out of the framework and the friction caused when we don't like something so that we can make it work for us? And this is why I say it's all about leverage, right? You can leverage everything to your benefit and your betterment. And I like to point to examples of organizations or teams or individuals that are the beacons of this kind of thinking. My favorite one, in the case of making things work for you, the United States government. Nobody does leverage like the US government, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. You know, hey, there's this new thing called social media. Great. How do we make it work for us? Hey, there's a global pandemic. Great. How do we make it work for us? Right? They're always looking through the lens of leverage. How do we make this drive our agenda to get where we want to go? Now, this is important because here's some basic neuroscience. I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I think you need a little bit of the framework here, is that everybody is running around with an operating system in their head. We call it a belief system. This system is just like a phone has an operating system, a computer has an operating system, so does a person, right? This system was written by you by the time you were about 6 years old. Call it your worldview, it's your understanding of reality, okay? So that system that's going around in your head generates every single thought you have. Now, as soon as you have that thought, whatever it is, you experience it as a feeling. And I like to break feelings down and make it really simple, right? Mad, sad, glad, fear, shame. That's it. It's really within the human experience, like it falls into one of those 5 categories somewhere. So when somebody says, well, I feel a little off. Okay, well, what does off feel like? Well, I feel, men in particular, men of my generation, I'm going to speak a binary here. It's not that I'm insensitive, it's that I'm a 50-year-old man, and this is my actual history. The men that I've worked with will say things like, you know, I feel that's unfair. Okay, well, what does unfair feel like? Well, I feel it's unreasonable. Okay, what does unreasonable feel? These are not feeling words, right? What is the feeling behind this? It's important to understand the feeling, because if you understand what the feeling is, you can track it back to what's the thought behind that feeling. It's also important because feelings drive actions. I know we like to think that we are rational people, that humans are logical. We're not. I mean, we can be, but that's not how our behavior works, right? It's not even how our decision-making process works. So we have the thoughts that are experienced as feelings, which then drive our actions. Our actions, of course, produce results. And then humans get weird. The results that we produce are unconsciously pre-designed to validate the system that starts it all. It's a feedback loop. So essentially what's going on is that people are going around in the world and they are unconsciously going out there and seeking to validate the system that they don't understand or even know is running. Now, this is how we keep ending up with repeating patterns. This is how people work in the same kind of job for the same kind of boss or date the same kind of person and have these recurring relationships in some way, because they are recreating the reality of their understanding. This is usually organized around safety, okay? Because what happens is that, generally speaking, and it sounds bananas, that people feel safer in a awful, familiar reality than they do in an awesome, unfamiliar one. This is why you get a lot of self-sabotage in athletes, right? They transcend that of where they think they should be, and so they start sabotaging themselves. So the opportunity is to work this backwards. What is the result that I want? What are the actions I think produce it? What are the feelings that I need to experience to drive those actions? What would be the thoughts behind those feelings? And then what would be the root code in the belief system that generates that thought? This is really tricky work, and this is why I have a job, because what I tell people is I'm a systems hacker. A human being is a system. So this system is creating your reality, but you can produce a completely different reality. And the way to get there faster is by embracing everything that's at your disposal, including the things that suck. It affects your neurochemistry, right? So we will, here's the step one, and this is the hardest part, which is why I like to start here. Accepting personal responsibility. Remember, nothing is anything. It's how I relate to it. And even phrasing it that way is empowering, right? This is how I'm relating to, nothing is offensive, right? I can be very polarizing or say something politically incorrect and not even notice it or mean it. And I do it a lot because the environment has changed, right? I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And like when we talked about romantic partnership, for example, we generally spoke in binary genders, right? And so now that seems terribly insensitive. Whereas I'm not being insensitive, it's old wiring and old programming, right? But somebody says that is offensive. No, I am offended by that. That's different, right? Because it's not offloading responsibility. And Friedrich Nietzsche had this really figured out. He understood that culture and language were intertwined. I'm not going to go through all this stuff, but we hear this every day in how we offload responsibility. Anybody say, I have to today already? I have to do this. I have to do that. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's a choice that you get to make. Now, maybe it's the choice that aligns with the outcome that you want. You still don't have to do it. I get pushback on this from lawyers, and I don't work with lawyers a lot because they can be a pain in the ass. But but they say, well, a judge says I have to go to court. I have to go to court. No, you don't. If you hold it this way, as you're not having choice, what you're essentially saying is that outside things control you, right? When we say I have to do something, when we say I'm trying to do something, or I'm going to do something, I want to do something, you're not actually doing anything. You're putting it off into the future. You're offloading responsibility. I'm going to focus really quickly on the I'm sorry thing, because again, as a 50-year-old man, a man of my generation, in my personal experience, women have tended to use this word sorry probably 10 to 1 more than men, and it's killing you. So I'm going to empower you right now. If you can make this one change, I'm going to change your life. So the I'm sorry about does 2 things. You walk into a room, you're 5 minutes late for a meeting. You say, hey, I'm so sorry I was late. Okay, makes sense. You're taking responsibility. But if you can shift that to, hey, thank you so much for waiting. Notice the difference in the feeling state that you experience that I will experience, because you've actually changed my brain chemistry. You walk in that room and you say, thank you so much for waiting. I appreciate you. I actually like you better. Now, here's the other thing, because there's something called neurolinguistic programming. And again, I was a radio broadcaster, and I will tell you that humans are dysfunctionally programmable. I am particularly very good at this. So when you hear something, and I can, granted, I can be a little bit of a conspiracy theorist sometimes, but when I hear the news driving something like social distancing, I'm like, that's the wrong word. Physical distancing. Like, what's really going on here, right? So I pay particularly close attention to words, because words have an association. Feelings drive actions, actions produce results. So when you tell me over and over again in our relationship that you're sorry about whatever, I start to think you have something to be sorry for. And I start discounting you and I hold you as a little bit less. Your credibility is damaged with me. And here's the shitty part. I don't even know that's happening. So I'm also going to tell you that this is a very hard change to make. And I think I have time. I'm going to get into it really quick. Here's how to make the change. You don't try to make the change. If you try to make this change, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to fail because you've been talking this way for a very long time. And number two, you're going to get frustrated with yourself for failing. And you're going to have a very sort of condemnation going on, like, damn it, I can't believe I'm still saying I'm sorry. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to notice every time you say you're sorry. And you're going to celebrate and be happy that you noticed it. This creates a positive reward feedback loop in your brain. This celebrates the change that you're going to make, and it amps up when in the brain, there's a part of the brain that's responsible for pattern recognition. And what's going to happen is your brain is going to get very familiar with the conditions and circumstances in which you say sorry. As you go into those conditions and circumstances, your brain will start to anticipate that you're going to say sorry, and it will make the change on its own. You cannot change this by trying to change this. You change this by noticing and celebrating every time you quote unquote do it wrong. That's the hack. There's a lot more of this kind of stuff. So the point being, culture is in language and we offload our responsibility all the time. And here are the common ways we do it. I didn't have time, right? This is not the thing. This is the excuse. Not having time is the result. It's not the thing. Of what is it a result? Well, it's a result of, I didn't make time. I take responsibility for that. If you look at a have or have not dynamic, I have time or I don't have time, people that tend to look through have and have not tend to have not. That's just the reality. So when we take ownership of our time, everybody's got 24 hours in a day, you get to dictate where every second goes. So I didn't make time. Maybe something else was more important. But the reason we're going to offload our responsibility, again, feelings drive actions, it's probably fear or shame. I'm feeling ashamed that I didn't do it, or I'm feeling afraid that I'm going to get in trouble. So I'm going to offload my responsibility and say I didn't have time. Same is true with something like you're making me angry. Well, again, your feelings come from your thoughts, which come from your belief system, which has been running since you were 6 years old. I don't have any responsibility for that. To say that I make you angry is to say that I control you, and I don't. So if we take responsibility for something, it's I'm feeling upset about this situation. I'm feeling angry about what's going on. I'm taking ownership of this. Same is true with I can't afford it. Have or have not dynamic. Not affording something isn't the thing. It's the result of the thing. What's it a result of? I haven't budgeted for it yet. Maybe other things are more important. Maybe I just haven't sat down to do it. The point is, only when we accept full responsibility can we affect anything. Responsibility is ownership. It's not fault, it's ownership. Again, have or have not dynamic. You know, I suck at it, I have no talent for it. Well, I haven't learned it yet. And then I forgot. I get this one a lot. You know, I forgot is a result. What's it a result of? I did not write it down, I didn't slow down, I didn't focus, I didn't pay attention. But whatever it is, I didn't make it important enough. Maybe I was distracted, right? But I forgot is the result. And the one I get the most pushback on is they didn't get back to me. Well, that puts it on them. They didn't get back to me simply means I didn't get it done. I didn't make it happen. I didn't follow up. Because if you're in a meeting and somebody asks you, hey, Connie, where are we with this, that, or the other? And you say, they didn't get back to me. They don't have egg on their face. You do, right? So it's taking that full responsibility. And when you empower yourself in this way, you will change your universe. I guarantee it. So this is what we call an internal locus of control, right? This is what Carol Dweck in the book Mindset refers to as a growth mindset. There's a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. This basically, an internal locus of control says, I have responsibility for this stuff. I can affect the universe. I can take and handle these things. If I rely on talent or I offload that responsibility, I have an external locus of control. Things are happening to me. And that is a completely different energy, right? So when we accept this, this growth mindset without relying on have or have not dynamics, then we can affect our world. Now, this is the other thing where things get really sticky and really hard. Judgment. When we have entered into judgment, suggesting that something should be other than as it is, when we use the words should or shouldn't, what I like to call shooting all over the place. This is essentially saying that I have entered into judgment, this is wrong or bad. And it's really hard to do this. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Somebody that's always late. I think we all know somebody that's always late. Maybe you are that person, right? And let's be clear, nobody's always late. It's very rarely 100% of the time, but somebody that's late all the time, and we don't like that. I'm notoriously early. So if somebody's late, that can sort of trigger me. And I might say something like, they are lazy, they are irresponsible, they are selfish, they are whatever. But if I ask 5 people, what do you say about that person that's late, almost all the time? They'll say one of those things. They'll say, oh, they're lazy, they're disrespectful, they're rude, they're whatever. But again, these are all different words, which means that the judgment is subjective. So I'm going to take ownership of the judgment, because judgment is separation, right? They are that, I am not. That is bad and I am good, right? The problem with separation is that it completely disempowers you in affecting change. If there's a cell phone on the table, you're not physically connected to it, you cannot affect it if it rings. But if you go and reestablish connection with it, you can do something with it. And the same is true with judgments, right? So judgment is the separation. When you release that judgment and say, okay, it's not that this person is lazy or rude or disrespectful or whatever. Getting someplace on time is a function of time management. Time management is a skill. And this person clearly has not learned that skill as of yet. Cool. That establishes connection, because now I feel compassion for this person and I maybe even want to help them. And that is how you can affect it. It does not mean we like the behavior. It doesn't mean we condone it. We're going to let it continue. It doesn't mean we like the person. It means we're going to stop making them wrong and bad, because that creates friction for us. And this is about getting us what we want in the way that's as fast as possible. The whole world is a mirror. Nothing out there is. It's how you relate to it. And it's reflecting back to you your understanding of the world and reality, right? So if you can treat it as such, then you can affect this change, because what you have is not a problem. It's a puzzle. Changing the way you look at this changes your neurochemistry, right? This is not a problem that you have. It's a puzzle you get to solve. Problems are heavy and weighty and intense. And again, that affects your feeling state. When you have a puzzle, puzzles have solutions. They can even be fun. Now, it's all reframing this stuff. When you reframe these things in a way that's more in alignment, you save yourself a lot of energy. That is going to affect your actions. That's going to affect the results that you get. And when we talk about things that suck, the reality is that struggle and progress are in relationship with each other, right? You don't get progress without struggle. It's that simple. So if you can embrace that and recognize that this is happening for you instead of to you, then you have a huge opportunity for yourself. So it's like an arrow, like a bow and arrow, right? In order for the arrow to fly, the bow has to strain and stress, and there's a lot of friction, and it's really difficult, and it feels like it's going to break. But that is how the arrow flies. That is how you get it to go on target. That's how you get it to go farther and higher than you thought possible, by embracing the suck, by recognizing that struggle and progress are in relationship and nothing is happening to you. Everything's happening for you, even when you don't like it, even when it sucks. Now, when you do this, something really interesting happens. When you release the judgments, when you accept full responsibility, when you start to affect your world this way, what happens is that you enter into what we call flow. This is what athletes, professional athletes, call being in the zone. This is also known as runner's high. It's all driven by your neurochemistry, and it's a 4-part cycle. The struggle, the suck, is the first part of the flow cycle. You get really frustrated with something and go, oh, I can't do this anymore. And then you let it go. You go for a walk or something, right? Or you get away from it in some way, shape, or form, and the ideas and the creativity starts flowing. The strain is gone. That's when you enter in that flow state. That's where all the brilliance happens. That's where the stress levels drop. That's where the speed goes up. And then on the back end of that is the recovery phase. And this is kind of what I call the, this is sort of a suck in itself, because you're not actually capable of being in a good mood when you're in the recovery phase, because all of your feel-good neurochemistry is burned out during the flow state. So like I get on stage, and every time I get on stage, it's amazing. Like I'm super focused, I'm connected, and it feels incredible. And then the next day, all of a sudden, oh my God, here's all the ways I sucked. It was totally terrible. I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm a horrible human being and I should never speak to anybody ever again. Yeah, I get it. I hear myself. I'm not physiologically capable of being in a good mood or in a healthy mindset. So I know once I've crushed it, the next day, don't take yourself too seriously because you're just not capable of being in a good mood. So accepting full responsibility, adopting that internal locus of control, releasing the judgments, and reframing every issue you have as a blessing, as an opportunity for leverage. The bigger the struggle, the more potential for advancement you have. I'm going to say that again. If you want bigger success, get bigger problems. I have a client right now. I was talking to him it was last week, and I love working with this guy because he's so entertaining. And he was telling me about literally his multi-million-dollar problems right now. We're in the middle of a multi-million-dollar raise, and all this kind of stuff is going on. And he got onto the Zoom call with the weight of the world on his shoulders, stressed out, freaking out, all this kind of stuff. And I let him ramble for about 25 minutes. And I just smiled. And he's like, what? Because he knows I got something, right? And I said to him, look at you with your cute little multi-million-dollar problems. And he just started laughing because 2 years ago, he was doing the exact same thing with his six-figure problems, his $150,000 problem, his $200,000 problem. And so here we are talking about his $4 million problems, and I'm just like, remember what I said to you? He's like, yeah. If I want bigger success, get bigger problems. So yeah, the sooner you can let go of how much you hate it, and it's okay to hate it, the sooner you can let go of the judgments, the sooner you can adopt responsibility, the sooner you can let go of and get out of the mindset of how much it sucks, the sooner you can change your neurophysiology and make it work for you. That's what I got. Questions, feedback, pushback, whatever, I'm open.
So we just have one question. I believe Norette, she asked if you've presented with Crew Orange County before.
As a matter of fact, I did. I presented to Crew Orange County at Center Club, and I presented Crew Los Angeles before that. This is all pre-pandemic. I didn't do this presentation though. We did the it's a little more sciencey one, the tools in neuroscience and peak performance. I think one of the slides is the same, but yeah, this is a totally different presentation.
The coolest presentation I have ever been to, ever seen, or ever done. That was the best presentation ever. So Chris, will you tell us what you did? And I was hoping when you are in person, we could do that again. It is the most remarkable thing I've ever done.
Oh, which one was it? What?
Where you split us up into groups of two, well, three basically. And we didn't know, no one knew anybody. And we had to literally just look at someone, and then we had 3 minutes to tell the other person everything they were thinking and feeling, while the other person behind us just wrote down all of the details. And it's incredible what you see when you look at someone else you never met before, and how deep literally you look into their soul and everything you write down on that paper. It was absolutely incredible. While most of us were just in tears, we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing how someone I've never met could know so much about me on the inside.
Yeah, I love that exercise, and that was actually quite impromptu. I don't think I had that planned. It came up in the moment. I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do here. The work that I do and the way that we do it is what I like to call jazz. I'll have a template or a program for a client, and I'll disrupt it about 10 minutes into that program because there's that intuitive kind of thing. If I speak to that presentation though for the group, it's sort of like a spoiler. So I'm happy to explain it in detail, but I'll let you direct me on that.
I would just tell them about the like what it's about, why you do it and how it works.
Yeah,
So walk up to a
okay.
perfect stranger and set him down in a chair, and then get somebody you've never met before to write some stuff down for you. And then you could do this exercise. It's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, there's it's a really interesting exercise, and I mean I would have, in order for it to be effective, I can't tell you everything, but I'll tell you that she's absolutely right. Sit down with another person, and you could do this over Zoom, you could do this with each other, and you spend about, as Norette said, 3 or 4 minutes, and write down everything you're seeing in them, right? Just everything that's coming forward for you, whatever you're sensing, your intuition, and what you see. And you'll see things like, I see how strong this person is, I see how smart this person, like you'll see all kinds of interesting things. But you make a list of that, and something very magical and very powerful happens once you kind of know what's up. And I'm not going to tell you what that is though, because it'll ruin it.
Chris, I love the idea of, embracing nothing is either good or bad, it just is. But I feel like there are circumstances in life when something's really, really shitty. It's really, really bad. Losing your 11-year-old sister is bad. I lost a brother at a very young age too. I feel like there are some things that we can all like collectively think of like it's objectively bad, right?
It's
like
not.
losing a loved one.
There are very few things that I work in terms of absolutes, and this is going to be one of them, because nothing is anything, and none of us are qualified to know what is for the highest good of all concern. Call it God's plan or whatever. I mean, I don't know, right? But there's a story about, I'm going to mess up the story, but you get the idea, about this farmer and his son, and the son is plowing, and the farmer's sitting there, and then this guy comes along with a horse and gives the farmer the horse, and so the son starts playing with the horse, but then and this guy says, "Oh my God, that's great, you got a horse," and the farmer says, "It's great, it's not great, who's to say?" And at some point the son falls off the horse and breaks his leg, and somebody says, "Oh my gosh, the horse, you broke your kid's leg, that's terrible." He says, "Terrible, not terrible, who's to say?" Right? And then the army comes along and says, "Hey, we're going to war, we need your firstborn son to be drafted into the military." "Oh, he's got a broken leg." "Well, oh, that's so fortunate, he can't go to war." It's fortunate and unfortunate, who's to say, right? So while it sucks, and I'm not saying it's easy, right? I'm not saying it's fun, I'm not saying it's comfortable, but who's to say that it's not for our benefit in some way, shape, or form? There's no way for me to forecast a hypothetical. What would have happened in my life had my oldest sister not died? What would have happened had I never dealt with addiction? What would have happened? There's no way to know. These hypotheticals are nonsense. Lawyers will tell you this too, right? You can't prove a hypothetical, and you can't prove a negative. You can't prove what would have or wouldn't have happened if. You can take a best guess. It's not fun, it's not comfortable, but who's to say it's ultimately bad?
That's interesting. That is, I think ultimately you're right. If I think about it in terms of intellectually, I think you're right. I accept it, and I'm better at making this shift in my own personal life, like with full acceptance. But I can also, from my own personal experience, I see like the harder the struggles in my personal life have been, the more I've accomplished through them. When something was easy, I didn't push as hard. I didn't get the results I wanted. But I definitely see that in my own personal life.
Yeah, I mean, and you can do more than you think you can. You are so much more in my, I mean, I've seen this in my experience and my clients, and that you, as you sit there speaking with me, all of you, right? You are so much more than you think you are. You are so much more than, I mean, even if you think you're awesome, you're not nearly as awesome as I know you are, because I've trained at Navy SEALs. You're about 20 times more awesome than you think you are. And you can do about 20 times more than you think you can. It's about leveraging everything, even your own fear, In my experience, the thing that I've wanted is often on the other side of the door that I'm terrified of. And the thing about fear is that from a neurobiological standpoint, it's no different than excitement and enthusiasm. Your brain and your body does not know the difference between fear and excitement. So if you know how to shift the polarity in your psychology, all of the fear that paralyzes you becomes fuel in your rocket.
Chris, you had talked a little bit about the flow cycle, which you described, and I think about a lot of the times when I've been in a flow situation and how I got there. In terms of the second step being the release, when you're trying to get in a flow situation, it's usually not something that you force. It just kind of happens, and you look up and you're like, wow, that was really great. That was remarkable. That was so productive. Mm-hmm. But knowing that and identifying that there is a cycle there, going from release to flow, is there like a tool that you look to in yourself? You do the same thing every time. You're like, I'm struggling, I need to go on a run so I can flow. Is there a system that you've broken down at all?
Well, flow is a very personal experience. So what gets me into flow will not get you into flow. Your physiology is scalable, but psychology isn't. Personality doesn't scale. So it's finding what the thing is for you. I will tell you some of the things that get in the way. There's the flow blockers, okay, especially with the women that I've worked with. Your desire and belief in your ability to multitask is shit, okay? I will tell you right now that, first of all, biologically, humans don't multitask, they task shift. This is a flow killer. So, and in order for you to stop multitasking, you need focus. Flow follows focus. Now, in order to get focus, y'all need boundaries. And the women that I've worked with have terrible boundaries, right? The way that, as a man of my generation, I'm pretty high on my priority list, like top 3 most of the time. The women that I've worked with are dead effing last on their priority list. Everything else comes first: the house and her mom and the husband and the kids and the job and blah, 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 blah. And she ends up getting leftovers of her own life. And this is the road to burnout. So if you don't have boundaries, you don't have focus. If you don't have focus, you don't have flow. So it's about structuring your life in a way that you can do this. Understand what your flow blockers are, because it really there's a the self-manipulation piece comes in the form of selfish, right? Oh, you're being so selfish, right? And I see selfish on this scale. There's just on one side of the spectrum, you have selfish, and on the other side of the spectrum, you have self-sacrifice. And somewhere in the middle is self-honoring, right? And it's kind of this floating fulcrum that moves back and forth. What is the self-honoring choice here, right? And it ultimately boils down to self-respect. On the airlines, put your mask on first, that kind of thing. But it does require boundaries. I can get into a flow state physically by doing something stupid before I'm about to do something stupid. So like what I mean by that is if I'm mountain biking, right? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump off this 5-foot thing before I jump over this 20-foot thing. Why are you going to do something stupid before you do something stupid? Because it gets me into flow a lot faster. But so what works for you is different, maybe it's writing, maybe it's getting up in the morning, maybe it's meditating, it all has to do with brain waves and blah, blah, blah. I won't go too far down the rabbit hole and think I'm talking too much.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, it's finding the focus. It's boundaries, and that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, the trick is that you can hack your own brain because the brain is super lazy. So if you can find one place in your life where you create a boundary for yourself and honor it, your brain will draw from that template and start to place it in other places, because the brain just duplicates patterns all the time. So it says, oh, if I learn it over here, I apply it all over here. So find one place in your life where you're like, you know what? This is where I'm going to set a boundary. This one place. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a huge time crunch. It doesn't have to be 4 hours. Like 5 minutes a day, 3 days a week. This is the boundary. That's the line. You're going to retrain your brain in how to make some self-honoring choices.
Great. Thank you.
What else can I do for you?
I had a question.
Please.
You said don't say sorry. So I'm getting better at not apologizing, valuing my time a little more, saying thank you for waiting. But do you think people expect apologies? So when you don't say sorry, you're looked at as being rude?
No, they're not aware enough to notice what's going on, and they're only noticing unconsciously what they're feeling. I got this one a lot of, well, what if somebody's dad died? I can't say I'm sorry your dad died. Like, well, did you murder the person's dad? Because I don't have sympathy for anybody. I don't care how drug addicted you are. I don't care what you've been through. I have no sympathy. I have empathy. It's a very different thing. So, and people generally want empathy. They don't want sympathy. People don't want you saying, I feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for anybody, because that's dishonoring to what their capabilities are, right? It's saying, oh, I'm so sorry you have to go through this. It's like, no, this is part of your dance. And ultimately, and I get a little bit of Nietzsche on this, right? Where the redemption is through the suffering, right? Like if you had a family member that had a heart attack, Nietzsche would say, oh, congratulations, that's amazing. Maybe a little too far there, right? But you get the idea that it's like, here's the opportunity, like here's an amazing opportunity for you to catapult forward. And so I don't feel sorry, because that suggests that you can't handle what's going on. I know you can handle what's going on. I know you can handle more than what's going on. I count on that, frankly, in my business.
Empathy.
Yeah. The trick with I'm sorry too is if you really screw up, I mean, the apology is still effective, right? And that's the active word, like I apologize. But what you're also going to do is going to tag it on the back end with the course correction, because the brain remembers the last thing that happened. So Kylie, if you come in and say, hey, I apologize for missing the meeting, I'm going to forgive you because I'm cool that way. I'm also going to remember that you blew off the meeting. If you come in and say, hey, I apologize for missing the meeting, I'm going to make sure that reminders are set and my assistant has everything set up so this doesn't happen again. Now I remember that you course corrected and I like you better, which makes our relationship even keel, which means less friction, which means you get more done in your life.
I would like to say that I can definitely agree. I feel like I've had to set boundaries with my family, my parents, to the point where, there's things that I need to get done. I need to do stuff for myself. And sometimes parents want you to be there, be them with you 24/7. And it's just really impossible. And sometimes you have to set those boundaries to, set your things aside and, get your stuff done, because it's so hard.
Right.
Especially when you're working.
People respect boundaries if you respect boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the two things that you can do for yourself. And I can make you more powerful instantly if you can do two things. Set boundaries for yourself. And if you can release the judgments that you have been holding against you, and I mean everything. You think, I'm too tall, I'm not tall enough, I wish I had blonde hair, I should have blonde hair and I don't have blonde hair, right? If your relationship to everyone and everything in this world is derived from your relationship to you, and everybody you bring into your life is going to be reflective of your relationship to you. If you have somebody in your life talking shit about you or to you, you have somebody in your mind talking shit to you, guaranteed. You release the judgments of you, make it 10 times more powerful just doing that. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing broken. There's nothing effed up. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. There's no good or bad. It's aligned or misaligned with where you want to go. That's it. But there's nothing wrong with you.
Chris, I like that you shared kind of the 5 feelings when you're going over the belief system: angry, sadness, happiness, fear, and shame. I think a lot of times, especially with our youth, when they're growing up and they're having like an emotional breakdown or they're being emotional, I think being able to say, like, to tap into it, are you angry? Are you sad? Are you happy? Is it fear? Is it shame? I think all those play into everything. And I think that will help them as they grow into become adults better deal and problem solve on their own. Because I worry about our younger generation right now, because a lot of them don't know how to handle any of those emotions. So I think that's I think though, just having those 5 are great. And then when you went into self-honoring, selfish, and then self-sacrificing, because us as women, I think a lot of us, when, you know, growing up, we're a product of our environment and we're taught to sacrifice a lot of things.
Right.
But it doesn't help us if we aren't taking care of ourselves first. So I like that: selfish, self-honoring, and then self-sacrifice. I really liked what you shared with us today and how you gave us, you know, taking responsibility of, and the blame. I think there's two sides of it. I didn't know if that was something you're going to share with us too, because I think those would be good reminders when someone says, hey, you made me feel this way.
They just wanted me to make
Going back into it. Well, no, let's go back to, you know, dial down to it. And instead of apologizing for everything, like you said, empathy and sympathy are two different things. And I love how you broke that down because it just kind of clicked. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions?
Anything you think you can start using? Oh, yeah, Connie.
Oh, I had a question. So if you do have someone who's going through a difficult time and you don't want to say, I'm sorry, because you don't want to do that, and you want to use your empathy, I guess I'm trying to figure out how you would use that.
That's a great question. Here's the funny thing. This is a little distorted, okay, or a little maybe dysfunctional. But like, let's say somebody tells me that their dad died, and I say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry your dad died." And he's like, "No, my dad was an asshole. I couldn't be happier," right? So it's empathy is being with that person in that place. Like, notice, what is this person experiencing? You know, how are they doing? How are they handling that? And that might even be the question, Connie. Is like, wow, how are you doing? You know, or even reflecting to somebody, and it could be they lost their job, which again might be the worst thing that happened, might be the best thing to happen. I will tell you that the jobs that I lost and the wives that I've lost was the best thing that ever happened to me. The only difference, and I'm not kidding, the only difference between the worst thing that could possibly happen, my wife leaving me, and the best thing that could possibly happen was 6 months time passage. That's it. Right? Because in the moment, it sucked. It was the worst thing ever. 6 months later, like, oh my God, my whole world's about to change in a whole new way, and woke me up in a whole new way. Right? So it was a catalyst. So reflecting to somebody that you understand the experience they are in right now. Hey, yeah, I'm not doing so good. My dad died. Wow, it looks like you're having a really hard time. Wow, that looks really challenging. Wow, you seem like you're really hurting right now. Wow, I can see that you're really upset by this right now. Like, reflecting those feelings, because generally speaking, humans definitely don't want to be judged, right? We only want three things. We want to be heard, we want to be understood, and we want to be accepted. I hear you, I get it, it's okay. Hey, I see that you're really mad. I totally get that right now. I got you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the other one is the word just. That one drives me crazy. Just following up, just checking in. It's a very weak position, right? Eliminate the word just. Hey, I'm following up on this. I'm checking in on this. You know, where are we with that? It's the subtle ways. There's actually a book, you know what? Tara Moore wrote a book called Playing Big, I think. And it's in chapter 8 that she discusses some of this stuff. The problem is with a lot of these other coaches is they don't tell you how to make the change. They tell you why to make the change, and they'll tell you what the change is. They won't tell you how to make it because most of them don't understand the neuroscience behind it. So like I said, you're going to make the change by noticing and celebrating when you quote unquote do it wrong. Notice when you use the word just. Notice when you use the word sorry. Notice when you say I have to. Notice when you say I can't. Notice, and celebrate every time you do it. Like, oh, cool, I just noticed it. Awesome. That's going to make the shift for you.
Are there any?
Oh. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll ask after.
I was going to ask if you have any other like books or resources on the language of responsibility, then you can share.
That one's tricky. Here's the thing with the language of responsibility. It's about noticing what you feel when you say it. Notice how it feels when you say sorry. Notice how it feels when you say just. Notice how it feels when you say can't. because this is not like what I had on that slide, and it's just nowhere near a complete list. And so you're going to say something somewhere else in some other way that feels very similar to the way it feels when you say sorry, or feels when it say you can't, or just, or whatever. And that's the indicator, like, wait, maybe there's a more empowered way to phrase this. You could do some do some searches on like nonviolent communication. That can be really good. Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to do it. I mean, I think they take it a little extreme sometimes, but you know, they, like if I'm going to execute a marketing plan, it's like execute's a violent word. Well, not really, I mean, but I don't know. Again, and very little of what we do is absolute, right? You know, this is about what works for you, right? It's about understanding how am I relating to this and how's it affecting me? And here's an example of the tool. Like the stuff that I'm giving you are examples of tools, but if you understand how the tool works and what it's designed to do, you can create a tool for yourself. And that's the one that you're going to use. What else can I do for you?
Chris, will you be providing us a copy of the presentation you had for us today?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. So Elisa can email to you, or?
Yeah, I'll send it to Elisa, and
okay,
she can distribute it if that works.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if there's anything else I can do, please feel free to reach out. The website is statusflow.net. I did write a book actually, which has a lot of this kind of stuff in there. The book is called Renegotiate Your Existence, Unlock Your Impossible Life. It's available on Amazon, because you can renegotiate your job, you can renegotiate your relationship, you can renegotiate your entire world. So renegotiate your existence. Yeah, and if there's anything I can do for you, please feel free to reach out, give us a call, send us an email. Happy to hear from you. And thank you again so much for the opportunity. Like I said, I love this stuff, and you know, it's getting me to shut up is tricky. So
Chris, this was so awesome. We're so grateful to you for doing this presentation for us. We look forward to the next opportunity to do it in person with you. Learned so much from you from the first time Kylie introduced you to us and we did that initial interview. So, so glad we can make this happen. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure. Go out today, find the first thing you don't like and ask yourself how you can make it work. Somebody steals your parking spot, somebody like whatever, like how can I make this work for me?
So good. Such good life advice. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Joining this morning, and we'll hope to see you at the next events. We have our tequila tasting dinner at Luna Grill and the 66ers coming up. So hope to see you all in person very soon. And thank you all for being a part of this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.